It was the summer of 1984. I was 13 years old and about to go into the 8th grade. And on this particular day, I sat in my junior high gymnasium with 23 other 8th and 9th graders who had just tried out for the school's drill team. It was a hot June day, and it felt like 100 degrees inside that gym. But we didn't care. We were huddled together in excitement, holding hands, waiting in anticipation for them to announce the new squad. I listened as they called out the names of 22 girls who had made the team. Only 2 of us did not make it that day. A girl named Susan and me. As they finished announcing the list, I felt the girls to the left and the right of me loosen their grips on my hands as they turned and looked at me in shock. I already felt disconnected from my peer group, but I didn't dare say a word because I knew what would happen if I did. And to make the situation even worse, my mom and dad both had to work that day, so I had to ride home with my friend Lisa. As we piled into the back of her minivan, her mom asked us how the tryouts went. And I listened as Lisa recounted with excitement making the drill team, while I sat there just trying to smile and hold it together. It was the longest 10-minute ride of my life. And I remember jumping out of that van the second it pulled into my Italian grandparents' driveway with barely a whispered thank you, because that's really all that I could muster. That afternoon, I moped around my grandparents' house, feeling ashamed, embarrassed, and disappointed with myself. I was trying to figure out how a girl like me who didn't make the team, what junior high would have in store for me. That evening, I walked into the den and I sat down next to my grandpa Nono on the green and orange plaid couch. He was watching an episode of The Jeffersons. And even though I wasn't paying attention to the show, I was grateful for the distraction of it. But then suddenly, he got up in the middle of the show and turned the TV off, and he stared at me. I wasn't sure exactly what was going on, but this is what I remember him telling me. Stella, when I was 14 years old, my mama sent me to the market to get her sewing materials. So I go into town and I'm about to cross the road when I see a horse-drawn carriage with 4 Italian soldiers inside. They stare at me and whisper, and they watch as I walk across the street. I hear the horse's footsteps following behind me, and I hear a man yell, "Wait!" But I don't think they are talking to me. But then the man yells, "Stop!" louder and louder. So I stop and turn it around as they pull up beside me. And one of these soldiers bounces down the steps and demands that I get into the carriage. He threw a uniform at me and said, "Join us now and fight for your country." But of course, I was scared and I did not want to go. So I said, "No, I will not." But then I hear a gun cock, and I see another soldier lift his rifle and aim it right at me. And he says, "Put on the uniform and join us, or I'll shoot you right here." So I'm listening to my grandfather tell this story with my mouth and eyes wide open in shock. What did you do? "Well, Stella, I'm no idiot. I put on the uniform and I get into the carriage, no?" I had no choice that day but to join the Italian army. I was 14, and it would take me months to get word back to my familia that I was alive and okay. Stella, sometimes life is tough, and you've got to be tougher and learn how to survive in a world that feels unfair. 'Tis true, no? After hearing my grandfather tell his story of how he joined the army during World War I, I forgot my disappointment of not making it onto the drill team. I'm not sure if that was his intention or not, but I will never forget his story and the way that it made me feel. It gave me a whole new perspective on my own life struggles, and it filled me with awe for the man that I'm blessed to call my grandfather. And even though my Nono passed away in 1989, his stories continue to live on through me. I'm Andrea Cadelli, and I'm an author, speaker, and story consultant with Heartfire Stories. And I work with leaders and entrepreneurs to help them engage and activate their target audience through the power of story. And I love doing this work because stories help you communicate with influence from your authentic voice. After all, when you tell your story, you can't be anybody else but you, right? Stories are very powerful ways of making a point in a way that lets people take their defenses down, right? So, I'm also a producer, director, and the host of a local TV show, and I bring stories to the stage and screen. So I've done 2 movies, I've directed about 40 plays, and I've done probably 100 corporate videos. So I also kind of have that part of the work that I do. I spent 18 years leading high-performance retail teams for Walmart and Sam's Club. So I did that until I was laid off in 2016. But all the work that I do has the same mission: to promote the art of storytelling and to empower you to share your own stories so that you can engage, inspire, and influence others. So I'm curious to know if this has ever happened to anyone in the room before. Have you ever given what you thought was your most stellar speech or presentation, only to discover that no one really got it? Even though you built the most beautiful deck, you included compelling statistics and facts, and you even conveyed the top 10 reasons that they should buy into your message, it still seemed to fall a little flat on its face. You know from the glazed over look in their eyes and the bobbling heads that you lost them at hello. Has this happened to you before? It's frustrating, isn't it? I know it's happened to me, and it's happened to everybody in this room at some point in our career. So how do we communicate in a way that makes us unforgettable and helps us influence others? Well, Hollywood has always had the answer to this question. So who out here likes to go to the movies, watch movies? Raise your hands. All of us do, right? Whether you like to go to the cinema or you like to watch from home in the comfort of your pajamas, there's one thing that we all have in common. We love a good story, right? In fact, we find them irresistible. And that explains why the global box office revenue is expected to grow from $38 billion in 2016 to $50 billion by 2020. That's a 32% growth in 4 years. And Hollywood is banking on this success based on one scientific fact: our brains are wired for story. And neuroscience has revealed the connection between story and our brain, and that our brains are constantly looking for a beginning, a middle, and an end to help us process and make sense of what's happening in the world around us. Here's a good example. Have you ever been on the phone with someone and they say, "Oh my gosh, you're not going to believe what happened to me today," and they go into this story about their crazy Aunt Betty and what she did that caused a rift in the family? And then right in the middle of their conversation, they're like, "Oh, hey, I'm getting another call. I got to take this. Listen, I'll catch up with you tomorrow." And they literally leave you hanging there on the line without the story. Has this happened before? It drives us crazy, right? That's because our brains have to know how that story ends. And if your friend doesn't call you back tomorrow, you will eventually make your own assumptions about crazy Aunt Betty and what she did that broke family ties. That's because your brain is so good at story that you will automatically start to fill in gaps of information with your own assumptions when you're left to your devices, right? So let's take a look at what a story actually is. and how they can help you communicate with persuasion. I like to think of a story as an invitation for others to follow you on your journey, to walk in your shoes, and to see the world through your eyes. And the thing that I find so beautiful about story is during this moment of connection, we begin to focus on our similarities and lose sight of the things that make us different. Have you ever noticed that before? Like when you've been listening to someone tell a story and you think to yourself, wow, me too, or yeah, I can relate to that. If you've experienced that before, then you know the type of connection that I'm talking about here. In essence, storytellers help unify us, and they use the power of story like a magnet to pull us in. That's why stories are the most important communication tool that you can have in your arsenal as leaders. And there are 3 key benefits that you will gain when you harness that power. First, stories make you relatable, and they help you deeply connect and engage with others. Because when you share a story, you express your humanity and you strike an emotional chord by sharing your truth. And guess what, people? That's what people are actually looking for. They're looking for someone to just speak truth to them. And your stories are evidence of your truth. And this expression helps you build relationships based on empathy and trust. And how many other people have talked about empathy and trust up on the stage today? Does anybody know Amanda Palmer? Has anybody heard of her? She's an indie musician. She was a struggling musician and artist, and in 2012, she basically dropped her record label and said, you know what, I'm gonna do this on my own. And so she basically set up a Kickstarter campaign and shared her story through a Kickstarter campaign, and she raised $1.2 million. Through the power of her story, she was able to manifest a sustainable fan base just by building relationships with people online. Number 2, stories make you memorable, and you have the ability to inspire others by sharing your life's journey. When Rosa Parks refused to get off the bus that day in 1955, or refused to give up her seat on the bus that day in 1955 in Montgomery, Alabama, her story inspired thousands. And it helped to spur the Montgomery bus boycott that launched nationwide efforts to end the segregation of public facilities in our country. We all know Rosa Parks, we know her story, and we know what she did to help our country. There is a saying that opinions build walls and stories help tear them down. I think that's a beautiful metaphor for the power that you have inside you. And number 3, stories help you lead with more influence because they ignite the imagination and they help people envision the future. If someone can't imagine your vision that you're proposing, if they can't imagine what the future is going to look like, they are less likely to buy into that change or that pitch. Sam Walton helped his associates, managers, and shareholders imagine a better future with Walmart by telling stories of how Walmart could help the lower and middle class families have a better quality of life by making their hard-earned dollars go farther than other retailers with higher margins. And people bought Sam's vision for Walmart because he helped them see and imagine a better future. His story and his legacy are proof that a story told is an idea that's sold. So I don't know if any of you follow Seth Godin, but I love Seth Godin, and I think I've read everything the man's ever written. But one of the things that he said that has always stuck with me is that people don't buy products and services. They buy relations and stories and magic. And you guys already know the importance of relationships and that people buy from those they know, like, and trust. We know that. But what is the magic that Seth is referring to? And how can you create that? Well, I think he's talking about the magic of storytelling. And you can create that same magic by sharing your own heart-fire stories. True stories, well told, that ignite imagination, inspire change, and influence results. Heart-fire stories resonate deeply with people because they reveal a universal truth. And they focus on a shift or transition in your experience as the storyteller where you learned something new that changes how you view the world or your perception of self. In literature, we know this as the hero's journey, right? Where the main character has a flaw that's revealed and he or she must overcome it through a series of challenges in order to achieve the goal and be transformed. Bringing people along with you on that kind of a transformational journey is powerful for two reasons. It allows them to feel more connected to you, and it allows them to learn from your experience. Your story is a map for someone who is lost, and the world is waiting for your unique voice to share it. So before I close today, I just wanted to answer a question that people ask me a lot. They want to know, how does someone become a professional storyteller? And I know there's lots of answers to that question, but I can only speak for myself. For me, even though I chose this as my profession when I got laid off my corporate career in 2016, I didn't become a storyteller as much as I remembered that I've always been one. And you are too. Whether you remember it yet or not, you are a natural-born storyteller. As a child, you engaged easily in this activity, right? Think about when you were a kid, how easy it was for you to tell stories. What happens is, as you grew older, the focus on more logical and analytical thinking kind of overrode some of that creative side of you. But the good news is, the ability to tell stories is a part of who you are, and it can always be recalled. Storytelling is your superpower because a story told is an idea that's sold. And when you remember this truth and you unleash their power, whether in the boardroom, in the classroom, or at your neighborhood barbecue, you will be unforgettable and you will engage, inspire, and influence everyone around you. Thank you.